Recording in progress.
Good evening. This is the November 2025 edition of the Windows, Office, and AI meeting. And tonight I'm going to break a little bit. I'm going to delay getting the open forum for problems, questions, comments, because late this afternoon I got in some additional pieces of information that you guys need to know about. So what I'm going to do here is, besides shooting myself, oops, I had to move something before I share the screen. And I went, okay, go up and out of my sight. Thank you. All right. This came out late today, and you better take it seriously from the sounds of it. Don't know if I got that sound on. Come on.
Most of the time that I'm there and I overhear them giving advice, it's just outdated and sometimes even wrong. Just think about it. If you know a lot about computers,
electricity bills have been climbing across the US, but the AI boom...
I'm going to walk you through everything that you need to know to pick the right laptop. And today's video, it is brought to you by our website, theslaptop.deals, where we show you all...
I got them out of sequence. Sorry about that.
Hi, Brent here, where tech is made simple. So if you are using Google Chrome and or Vivaldi, then just to let you know that the weekly security updates have arrived for both browsers and basically rolled out at the same time for both Chrome and Vivaldi. Now, if you are using Vivaldi, you just head up to your main menu, help, check for updates, and this will update the browser automatically if it hasn't done so already. And then if we head to the About page, which by the way has been updated with the latest version 7.7 release, which I posted on a couple of days ago. I'll leave that video for that version upgrade link down below and in the end screen. So for Vivaldi, the browser version in bold is 7.7.3851.52, Chromium platform 142.0.7444.180. And if we head over to Google Chrome, very similar process, main menu, help, About Google Chrome, 142.0.744.175 or 0.176 for Google Chrome if you are running the browser on Windows, Mac or Linux. Both those point releases on those different platforms means your browser is fully patched running version 142. Now just to focus on the security fixes that have rolled out, we get 2 high severity flaws that have been patched. Both are listed as type confusion in the V8 JavaScript engine, but Google says it is aware that an exploit for CVE 2025-13223 exists in the wild. So that's a 0-day that's already out there, current and happening, and it's active. So this is a very important security update, patching a 0-day exploited in the wild. So just double check. Both browsers, if you are using them, are up to date sooner than later. Now, just to give you a quick recap as to what a type confusion vulnerability is all about with this 0-day that has been patched. It can arise when a program attempts to access a resource with an incompatible type, and it can have serious impacts as it allows threat actors to perform out-of-bounds memory access, cause a crash and execute arbitrary code. So that's just a very brief overview as to what a type confusion vulnerability is all about. So just double check your browsers up to date sooner than later. And while we are talking about updates for Google Chrome, if we head to our calendar, we are expecting Chrome version 143, which is going to be our next stable release, to start rolling out, I would say, either next week, Tuesday or Wednesday. So if you are using Google Chrome, that might be something to look out for. And if you are asking the question, does the workaround to activate uBlock Origin still work and other MV2 extensions still work after this point release has been applied? Yes, it does. I did notice though on this device, the Windows 10 device, not on my Windows 11, but on my Windows 10 device after applying the update, that I had to restart the browser again after I had applied the update to get the toggle to be able to turn on and off with developer mode turned on. But nonetheless, that workaround, as far as I'm aware, still works. So that's Google Chrome out of the way. Now head into Vivaldi, because over and above the security fixes that have rolled out for Vivaldi, we also get some crash fixes and some bug fixes. And there's a bit of an improvement on the About page, which, as mentioned, was updated with the version 7.7 release. So if you head to the About page now, you'll see now it shows check-in update during the update check. Here at the top, check-in for update, which I think is a nice touch. So that's a nice little UI interface tweak and adjustment, and I really enjoy this new About page look. And then we get 4 crash fixes that have rolled out. The first is it was crashing occasionally on window activation. If you're using the browser on Mac OS, there are 2 crash fixes for Mac OS. The first is when you were typing certain words in the address field, it could crash. And it could also crash on closing a tab while autofill bubble is visible. So those are 2 crash fixes for Mac OS. A crash fix for VPNs when installing a VPN in a private window. So 4 crash fixes, so those are important. And then there's a bug fix for saving browsing history that didn't work. And there's a start page bookmarks fix where the widget on the start page was showing a folder selector on every restart. And there's also another bug fix taking place under the hood for start page widgets as well. So 2 bug fixes for widgets on the start page. So quite an important update for both browsers. Patching a 0-day for the Chromium platform, and obviously for Vivaldi we get those different fixes and crash fixes as well. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys.
Okay. Now, this applies to any browser based on Chrome and Chromium browsers. So this includes Edge, this includes Brave, this includes so many other browsers, it's not funny. It does not affect Firefox and some of the sub versions based on Firefox, such as LibreWolf, FireDragon, WaterFox, to just name a few. So this is something you gotta understand, and it's a 0-day thing. Of the CBSs that were issued, one is actively being exploited right now. The other one is not yet. They're both very high rated, so you've got to do them. All you have to do is go open up your browsers, each and every one of them. You go to the whatever the 3 dots or the 3 bars, etc., where you would find your browser's settings, and down towards the bottom there's always some section about help or about. Under help you'll see an about. About gives you, when you click on it, the ability to check your version that's installed against what might be available. And if there's a new version, it'll automatically load it in. And then in some cases, like he had, you may have to restart the browser. In other cases, you will not have to restart the browser, but you will be using the newest version that may have a patch. You cannot expect all the browsers to be patched simultaneously. So if you don't have an update today on one of your browsers, then check it the next couple days to see if that patch has come through to stop this vulnerability from turning your holidays into a nightmare. Any further questions? Go ahead.
Is anybody using this Vivaldi?
Yeah, I use it some. I
Never heard of it.
I also use Brave, and I use several others that are based on Chromium, including Chromium itself. Any Dennis?
Just to clarify, so I got two different questions. One is, since I'm using a Chromebook and they say they're always uploading like the latest version, do I need to do anything on a Chromebook as such? Or are they fixing it kind of when they upload a new one every time I turn it on, apparently?
Well, that's the one nice thing about a Chromebook, and it's the only real nice thing. It's some people will call it a walled garden. And sometimes they talk about that with Apple, and its Apple Store as a walled garden, meaning that it's very secure, and it's secured by Google for Chromebooks. Anything you do on a Chromebook goes straight to Google's servers. So they know anything and everything you do. And I mean everything. That's the downside. But they do keep it very secure. And every time you turn on your Chromebook, if you turn it off, you will likely have a check of software, and they may do a quick update, especially for something like a 0-day security risk.
Okay. And part two, question two, how about on my Linux box? So when I open that up and I open the Chrome, so I would have to update that one using the method you described, going to the three dots, etc. Okay.
Any regular Chromium-based browser, and I use quite a few different ones for various reasons. And I also include Firefox and some of its sub-branch browsers. It doesn't matter whether it's on Windows, Linux, or even a Mac OS. A Mac OS running Chromium, or any of the Chromium derivatives like Edge, Brave, etc., are all vulnerable. Period. There's no exception. The Chromebook is an exception because it's a specialized system that is tied directly into Google's infrastructure. And it's very difficult to get any kind of malware through that process into a Chromebook. That's the one real positive thing. You have the highest level of security because Google stays on top of this stuff, and therefore you don't generally have to worry about it. It's the others that you are responsible for installing any given browser. You are, and that includes Edge in Windows. When you install Windows, you're installing Edge. So you're responsible for updating them and keeping them up to date. That's where I use a program called Patch My PC, and I ran that, and I had run it over the weekend, had everything pretty up to date. When I saw this afternoon, I went and ran Patch My PC, so it would get all my browsers at one time that would be affected so far. And I had a plethora of other updates, between 17 and 24 updates of software on my system that Patch My PC covers. And if you want to know what that is, I'll put in chat. I put in chat this article, the title and the URL, because I didn't have time to put it in the handout that I'll give you. All right, I put in Patch My PC URL in the chat also. I'm going to continue on. Now, this one here, anybody who is looking for a new PC, and not everybody is, this is an excellent video by this outfit explaining a lot of key things you need to understand. And I'm not going to play this whole thing. I'll only play a portion of it. And I'm going to put this in the chat as well.
All the laptops that we recommend for various types of users. Now, the first thing that you need to decide on is what you're going to use the laptop for. You see, there are 6 main types of laptop users. The simplest are people who just want a laptop for basic home, school, or office use. Say you're just browsing the web, working on documents, or taking some Zoom calls. Or you're a student and you're studying a discipline that just doesn't need a powerful computer. Law, med, business, they're all great examples of this. You guys, you just want a high-quality, reliable laptop with decent battery life, preferably one that doesn't break the bank. The next type of laptops for people who just need performance but don't really care about anything that requires graphics like gaming. If you're a software developer, audio engineer, trader, you want a laptop with a powerful CPU and a good amount of memory. That's because you use specialist applications, and those applications are just more demanding. And you tend to have more of them open at the same time. Also, to effectively use specialist applications like software development IDEs, you want a large high-quality screen. That's because those applications have a lot of capabilities and you want to be able to easily find them without squinting. Next up are laptops for gamers. For you, the GPU, also known as the graphics processing unit, is the most important factor. A GPU is much better than a CPU at rendering 3D images, and that's what most games are. A more powerful GPU means that games look better and you get more frames, making gameplay smoother. Just because the GPU is the most important factor though, it doesn't mean the CPU doesn't matter. You'll still need one fast enough to keep up with your GPU. Now, a very similar use case to gaming is 3D rendering. The reason I'm separating out this category is because of Apple's MacBooks. Most modern games, they do not run on Mac OS. You need a Windows laptop. But rendering applications for design and art, they run very well on MacBooks. So, if you're just doing 3D work and not gaming, a MacBook Pro is a very viable choice. Next up are laptops for video and photo editors. When you export a video, it's called rendering. But this is a different kind of rendering to 3D rendering that I already talked about. You see, videos and photos are 2D. Each of the images are stored as bitmaps that are compressed to take up less storage. To render a video or edit a photo, you need to decompress each image, do whatever changes you're going to do to it, then compress it back again so the file isn't ridiculously large. These operations are mostly performed via media engines, not GPU cores. But the more powerful the GPU, the more of these media engines you get. This means more powerful GPUs are faster for this task. In addition to this, video and photo editors will want a high quality screen with a wide color gamut. That's so that the images just look accurate. And just like all other professionals, you'll want a decent amount of memory and a screen that allows you to see a lot of information. Next are data scientists and AI developers, a rapidly expanding field. Just like gaming or 3D rendering, data science applications use a laptop's GPU, not really its CPU. What separates these tasks from gaming, though, is that AI models are extremely memory dependent. This is specifically the memory available to a GPU. Do not confuse this with system memory that is used by the CPU. Other than this, data scientists, just like any professionals, they run professional software. So you want a decent amount of memory and a great screen. Finally, if you cross use cases, you're doing multiple things on your laptop, you want to ensure it meets the minimum requirements of each of the cases you're going to do on it. Alright, now that you know what kind of laptop you need, it's time to pick the components. Let's start with the CPU. There are 4 manufacturers: Intel, AMD, Apple and Qualcomm. Intel and AMD, they use the traditional x86 architecture used by Windows computers. These processors support the widest variety of applications. The negatives of Intel and AMD is that you either get great battery life or you get great performance, but not both. This trade-off is because their processors just aren't that power efficient. Also, if you want a powerful processor from Intel or AMD, there are additional trade-offs. Higher performing processors require a lot more power. That power generates more heat, which needs to be dissipated. That means you'll want a larger laptop with a more robust cooling solution. Generally speaking, the more performance you get from an Intel or AMD laptop, the heavier it is, the less battery life you get, and you may have to deal with some heat and fan noise. Now, there are smaller laptops available with powerful Intel and AMD components, but those have even more trade-offs to deal with. Either the components don't perform as well, or there is even more fan noise and heat you have to put up with. If you don't like these trade-offs, then you'll need to go with an Apple or Qualcomm processor. They use the ARM architecture. Their chips are much more power efficient, leading to less heat, less fan noise, and even better battery life. Apple's M series in particular delivers incredible performance for the least power draw. Apple's MacBooks are by far the quietest when doing performance tasks, and they are the only ones that have good battery life that you can actually do performance tasks while unplugged on. This sounds wonderful, but there is a catch. You see, not all applications run on macOS, particularly games. So if you are a gamer, you'll have to go with Intel or AMD. When it comes to Qualcomm, it's a little rougher. Laptops with their processors run the ARM version of Windows. Even though an application says it runs on Windows, it may not run on the ARM version of Windows. It's a little confusing. Right now, I'd only buy a Qualcomm laptop if you're just sticking to web browsing, office applications, collaboration software like Zoom, and remote work apps like Citrix. Those all work really well. And if that's all that you're doing on your laptop, a Qualcomm one is a really great option. Alright, now that you know what kind of CPU to get, it's time to help you pick the specific one. Most manufacturers, they group their CPUs in 3 performance tiers. To make this choice as simple as possible, we've already grouped all the current processors into those 3 performance tiers on our website, bestlaptop.deals. If you expand the filters and scroll down to the processor section, you'll see Basic, Good and Max Performance. Intel calls their least powerful processors Lunar Lake or Panther Lake. These processors have a U or a V at the end of their name, and as I said, they offer the best battery life. Intel's higher performing processors have an H at the end of their name, and their best performing ones have an HX. One of the biggest myths is that you get more performance if you move up from a Core Ultra 5 to a 7 or a 9. These used to be called i3, i5, i7 and i9. These designations, they do not matter nearly as much as they once did. The primary factor that now determines performance is which series the processor belongs to. A Core Ultra 7 is only faster than an Ultra 5 if it's from the same series. Said another way, in most cases, a Core Ultra 7 from Intel's most powerful HX series will perform much better than a Core Ultra 9 from their mid-level H series. AMD follows an even more confusing naming scheme. It's just a mess. Ryzen 5 is their basic performing processor that delivers solid battery life. Ryzen 7 is more powerful. Ryzen 9 is just confusing. Some of them are mid-tier processors and some are high-performing ones. We would say to...
Okay, I'm going to stop it there, and that because of time. This goes on for about another 10-11 minutes. But it also breaks down GPU, memory, etc., etc. Gives some very good sound general advice that you don't get frequently. So if you know of anybody that's looking to get a new machine, this video will give them a lot of information. Then they'll have more poignant questions that they might ask you or someone else about it. It's just a case where things are getting extremely complex. The computer hardware market overall is very much, in a sense, like Linux distros. There's tons and tons of different distros, various options, different desktops, so on and so forth. And basically the hardware that we install a Linux or a Windows or a Mac do pertain to the physical hardware description they're bringing up right now, that is getting very, very messy and trying to figure out, what do I need? So they did start off with 6 different types. You may have multiple qualifications out of those 6, and you got to take the combination of each of their descriptions and apply it to the CPU, the GPU, memory, etc. It's not a joke anymore. This really gets to be somewhat of a nightmare. The Intel 14th generation is the last, I'll call it old style CPU series. After that comes the ultra core processors, starting with a 200 series, and if the 300 series isn't out right now, it's going to be out very shortly. And same is true in the Ryzen, AMD Ryzen series. It's a Pro series. The distinction is the core, the ultra core Intel series, the Ryzen Pro AMD series have a built-in NPU, neural processing unit. That's the key to the future CPUs, and likely some future system all of us are going to be buying. So if you can, shall we say, if you're not ready for the Ultra series with an NPU, then you're going to be stuck with constantly having older equipment with older hardware that at some point in time, just like they did with Windows 11, said that you've got to have a certain processor. You have to have TPM. You have to have secure boot, which requires the GPT partitioning instead of MBR partitioning. A lot of these things all become snowballing effects, and that's essentially going to continue on with the newer processors. And it's also going to be a case where at some point in time, anything older than an ultra core 200 series or 300 series and the equivalent AMD Ryzen Pro series, anything older than that may not support, say, Windows 12 if and when they release the specifications on it. Or like in 11, we went 3 years before they really clamped down with 24H2 on hardware requirements. And now you have the likelihood of that happening with the newer processors, that you'll have to have a machine that's got an NPU, or you may not be running Windows. But that might take 3 years after they announce whatever Windows 12 is going to be officially available for the insiders first, and then eventually for the public within probably a year. Anybody got any questions or comments on this information? This wasn't in the handout, so it's what you want to do is before you leave this meeting, you want to do a save of the chat. You go into your bar down at the bottom of Zoom, go to chat, and up near the top, you'll see 3 horizontal dots. You click on that. It only has one option, save the chat. And when you leave Zoom, it will put a text file of what's in the chat for you on your machine. All right, now we'll try and move on. All right, this is one, it surprised me, but it didn't surprise me because of things I've heard on the news, etc., and my own build.
Is making it worse. A lot worse. New data centers are popping up everywhere to handle ChatGPT, Gemini, and countless other AI tools. And here's the kicker. You're helping to pay for them whether you use AI or not. In Columbus, Ohio, residential customers saw their bills jump by $27 a month this summer. Philadelphia went up $17. Washington, D.C. up $21. You may not be using more power, but utilities are building massive infrastructure for data centers and passing those costs onto you. So how much is this AI blitz really costing us? And what can we actually do about it? I'm Matt Farrell. Welcome to Undecided. This video is brought to you by 8 Sleep. Whether you're a fan of generative AI or not, its rapid growth has had a powerful effect on grid planning. And the way utilities plan the grid directly affects your electric bills. Here's the thing. Figuring out how much AI is really costing us is tough for 2 reasons. First, the math is complicated. We're not talking back of the napkin calculations here. And second, we're working with incomplete data.
Why has no one ever told you that the active compound in honey can actually reverse cognitive decline and brain fog?
Anyone struggling with memory problems should try this recipe before Big Pharma bans it. Attention! If you do this today, you'll eliminate memory lapses and never struggle with forgetfulness again. Your brain will feel razor sharp.
Big tech companies aren't exactly transparent about how much energy their AI models actually use. The lack of transparency on big tech's end means that for most generative AI models, estimates of their resource usage simply aren't available. The best we can do is speculate, but the problem is that speculation is constantly changing as the technology does. In the meantime, many of us are left wondering why our bills are jumping up when our own energy use isn't. And that's not to say that we've got absolutely nothing. In August, Google released a technical report outlining the resource consumption of its Gemini model. Altogether, Google claims that the typical Gemini text prompt uses about 0.24 watt-hours of energy, or about 9 seconds of TV time. However, in Google's own technical paper, the authors acknowledge that AI users are already racking up billions of prompts every day. Those prompts are weighing on our wallets, directly or not. It's also worth reading the fine print here. These numbers haven't been verified by a third party, and as stated in a press release footnote, these findings do not represent the specific environmental impact for all Gemini text generation prompts, nor are they indicative of future performance. That brings us right back to the first problem with determining the scope of AI's impacts. It's complicated. For starters, the amount of energy used for training a model is not the same amount of energy used for maintaining and providing AI-based services to customers. In this figure from a recent study by the U.S. Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, you can see a huge difference in the approximate operational time between AI training and inferencing. Inferencing is basically the response that you get from an AI when you ask it a question. When it comes to inferencing, not all tasks are comparable. Different types of queries require different amounts of energy, and models can vary wildly. Machine learning company Hugging Face is attempting to standardize AI's energy use with its AI Energy Score leaderboard, which is separated into categories. It shows how tough it is to make a one-to-one comparison. Image classification is the orange to text generation's apple, and generative AI is one hefty fruit basket. The median energy used for inference is slanted by larger customers or heavy users, and the bell curve is pretty warped. And the bad news is, residential ratepayers are the most vulnerable to these extremes because of the way that utility regulation here in the US works. Rising electric bills are the most obvious impact. There's a direct link between the surge in data centers and higher costs for residential customers. So how does it happen? Simple. Data centers get special treatment. Why do they get special treatment? Because it's profitable for utilities. When data centers started ramping up for the AI boom, utilities had to boost their capacity to handle the sudden demand for power. For most utilities, the preferred age-old strategy to boost capacity is to design the whole system for the highest peaks of power consumption. In other words, utilities plan for the worst day of the year when the grid is straining to meet demand. That one egg frying on the windshield summer afternoon when everyone's cranking up the AC. Now, the way utilities like to do this is by building more transmission, more power generation, and more infrastructure. So when utilities need to handle power-hungry data centers, they build more infrastructure, more transmission lines, more power plants, more everything. But all that building costs money. And where does that money come from? Us. Your electric bills pays for these projects. And you might think that's fair. I mean, after all, everyone benefits from a bigger grid. If demand is going up, costs should go up too, right? It's not quite that simple though. For starters, utilities aren't typical businesses. They're government-backed monopolies. And the way they calculate rates, it's complicated and not very transparent. Even utility regulators don't have access to all the information they need to figure out if a utility's proposed rates are actually fair. Because here's the thing, utilities profit by spending. When these companies go on a shopping spree, they do so knowing that they can initially justify the splurge by having residential ratepayers pick up the tab. And they can externally justify an addition to that tab by claiming that spending is necessary to meet climbing demand. Speaking of energy demands, there's another kind of energy consumption that we should really talk about. That's yours. While utilities are optimizing their power output 24/7, most of us are not optimizing our most important recovery system, sleep. That's where today's sponsor, 8 Sleep, comes in. I've actually been using 8 Sleep for years now, all the way back to their very first crowd-funded version, just the mattress surface. With the cover that I have, it's 55 degrees Fahrenheit or warming up to 110 degrees Fahrenheit, with each side of the bed controlled independently. My wife and I each have our own ideal settings. The new autopilot of quality sleep each night. I've seen a massive improvement in how I sleep with the temperature regulation and really miss it when I'm traveling.
This is the quickest way to clear out stuck poop.
The number one food for
and better sleep. Thanks to 8 Sleep and to all of you for supporting the channel. Now back to how utilities are using AI's unprecedented energy appetite to justify building more infrastructure. With that in mind, the incentive to prioritize data centers is clear. We already know that big tech's rush to spit out generative AI products is sucking up massive amounts of energy, unlike anything we've ever seen, especially because we can't physically see inside the black box. Everywhere that data centers are discussed, the same word comes up over and over again. Unprecedented. It's no surprise then that utilities are fighting for attention from the likes of Amazon, Google, Meta, and Microsoft. By snagging these elite clients with generous discounts, utilities meet the outsized needs of data centers with more and more infrastructure, which then passes some of that cost onto residential customers. But here's the thing, we're not even using most of the grid most of the time. Duke University researchers explained it this way. A system utilization rate below 100% is expected for most large-scale infrastructure designed to withstand occasional surges in demand. Nevertheless, when the gap between average demand and peak demand is consistently large, it implies that substantial portions of the electric power system, generation assets, transmission infrastructure, and distribution networks remain idle for much of the year. These assets are expensive to build and maintain, and ratepayers ultimately bear the cost. So are there other ways to meet demand? Absolutely, but those methods don't make money. Or do they? And here's the thing. The fact that we're only using a fraction of our grid capacity, that's actually good news. It means we have room to solve this without building everything from scratch. I'll show you how in a bit, and in the Patreon extended cut of this video, I'll dive into how grid users of all sizes can reduce their consumption and cash in on it too. What about improvements in efficiency as AI becomes more common? Well, I'm actually optimistic that the future of generative AI will be less energy intensive. There's already signs of that happening right now. At the same time, that might not fix the problem. I don't have to tell you how much consumer AI products are booming. There's probably evidence of that right below this video. Increasingly efficient bots, agents, and customer service lines that put you right in the shoes of Richard Deckard could be really cool and convenient, and not at all insanity-inducing. But they could also drive up demand even further, minimizing or negating those efficiency gains. This idea of increasing efficiency inadvertently leading to increased consumption is what's known as Jevons paradox, which has haunted us since the 19th century. English economist William Stanley Jevons first theorized it would happen with coal. Here's another thing that people get wrong about data centers. Yes, they're getting bigger and using more power, and yes, AI data centers use even more. But these buildings aren't running at full blast 24/7. AI chips have limits, just like any hardware. Tyler Norris, who led that Duke University study that I mentioned earlier, points out that even the most sophisticated data center operators can't predict exactly how much capacity they'll need as the market shifts. So when things are uncertain, companies play it safe. They build extra capacity to handle potential spikes or changes in demand. The problem, of course, is that this exact overbuilding is what raises prices. Before I show you what this is actually costing people, I want you to know that there are ways out of this. Some states and utilities are already fighting back, and some of the solutions are surprisingly simple. But more on that in a bit. So what does this actually cost people? You probably already see it in your own electric bill. But let's look at the bigger picture. A Deloitte report from June shows that 8 of the 9 largest data center markets saw prices jump over the national average between December 2023 and December of 2024. Now that graph might make it look like Ohio got off easy, but that's definitely not the case. Ohio is still one of the hardest hit states. This past summer, the generation service portion of monthly electric bills for Columbus residents rose by a whopping $27. According to Utility American Electric Power, or AEP Ohio, limited generation supply combined with increasing demand for electricity is driving bills up for customers. But it gets worse. Because the power grid operates regionally, this problem spreads beyond individual cities. The regional transmission organization called PJM oversees electricity for 13 states. So it's not just Columbus feeling the heat. This summer, residential customers in Trenton, New Jersey saw their bills jump by $26 a month. Philadelphia went up 17, and Pittsburgh by 10. And in Washington, D.C., Pepco customers are paying an average of $21 more per month. All these areas are part of PJM's grid. And according to PJM's independent market monitor, data centers are responsible for about 75% of these rate increases. And here's what they said in a June analysis. It is misleading to assert that the capacity market results are simply just a reflection of supply and demand. The current conditions in capacity market are almost entirely the result of large load additions from data centers, both actual historical and forecast. And there's another long-term problem. When utilities keep building new infrastructure instead of maintaining what we already have, the existing grid suffers. Old equipment, lack of upgrades, and above-ground power lines in rural areas create a perfect storm.
This holiday, Verizon's got the craziest deal ever with iPhone 17, iPad, and Apple Watch.
We're seeing more frequent and more severe wildfires as a result. But it isn't all bad news. While the strain brought on by the AI boom might seem insurmountable, what we're lacking isn't solutions, but will. In fact, new data centers could potentially make things more affordable and efficient if, and that's a big, big if, they collaborate with regulators and utilities. And here's a few ways how they can do it. Some states are starting to fight back. In June, Oregon passed House Bill 3546. It creates a new class of large energy use facility specifically designed to prevent cost shifting. For Ohioans that suffered this summer, relief might be around the corner. In July, the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio voted to approve a settlement put forth by AEP Ohio that ensures that new data centers pay for at least 85% of the energy they project that they'll use each month, even if they end up using less than expected. As of October, AEP Ohio has claimed that this tariff, which effectively forces accuracy in estimating data centers' energy needs, allowed for its backed-up interconnection queue to drop from 30 gigawatts worth of demand to 13 gigawatts. And notably, the utility went on record to say that a lot of these projects might have been duplicative or speculative once the Ohio Manufacturers Association accused AEP Ohio of inflating the original numbers, but it's still food for thought. There's a better way to manage the grid, and it's called demand response. The basic idea, instead of building more infrastructure, you shift when people use energy. I touched on this earlier, and honestly, there are so many ways to do demand response that it could be its own video. But here's one interesting idea from that Duke study. They argue that the key isn't how much energy we need, it's when we need it. Scaling back usage for a few hours can have powerful results, and this has big implications for AI data centers. Take PJM as an example. According to Duke's research, PJM could add 13 gigawatts of new load without building any new infrastructure. The trick is curtailment. Now, this isn't about cutting off renewable energy when there's too much. This is about reducing power demand. Big customers could switch to backup generators or battery storage systems, basically shift when they use power. Duke's research found that curtailment would only be needed 0.25% of the time. Put another way, the entire US grid could handle 100 gigawatts of new data center load by cutting back for just 2 hours on average. And that's just one demand response approach. So what are these data center companies actually doing about all this new energy demand? I recently talked to Microsoft about how they're handling it, and they used a term I hadn't heard before: additionality. The idea is pretty straightforward, but important. Whenever Microsoft adds a new data center and needs to pull more power from the grid, they also add an equal amount of new carbon-free generation to that same regional grid. For example, their new data center in Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin is matched with a 250 megawatt solar project in Portage County. That's not just about going green on paper. That additionality means adding new clean energy to the system so that the overall grid gets cleaner as they grow. They also work with utilities on battery storage and specialized rate structures to help keep the grid stable and avoid driving up costs for everybody else. In other words, they're trying to expand the grid capacity in step with their own energy demand and to also help grow the clean energy pie at the same time. Then there's the technological approach. In 2020, Google announced that it had begun using an algorithm to shuffle around its computing tasks to align with the times that renewable energy is abundant. In 2023, Google adapted this routine for demand response, allowing the company to limit or reassign less urgent requests when the grid is stressed. It's pretty clever. So here's what we've learned. We can't manage the grid the same way anymore. AI data centers are different from a typical industrial customer, and we need to treat them differently. The good news, we can upgrade the grid for everyone. The solutions exist. I couldn't cover all of them in one video, but they're out there. This isn't a one fix to solve everything problem. We need utilities, regulators, and data center companies themselves all working together to make this happen. But what do you think? What's the best path forward for this?
Okay, before I open it to the floor, I want to add, in Hobart, Indiana, somebody wanted to create a data center there, and people in the community got up in arms because of the cost of the electrical energy. But around the local area where the data centers are, there's also a big impact on water supply, which is used to cool the data centers because that's what electronics and computers require. So you can, if you're within a certain distance of a data center, you may get a double whammy: higher water bills and higher electric bills. Anybody got any comments or questions? Burt, go ahead.
Well, today at the Ignite function, they talked about the data centers Microsoft's creating, and the newest, largest one brings them to a point at the end of this year where they have no, all their electric usage will be offset by renewable energy. And so some of the things they're doing are windmills, some of them are that kind of towers. And though in terms of water, they have recirculating water that goes through to cool everything down, and they only have to replace it every 6 years. Well, so there's technology coming, as the new centers are built, they're trying to meet the need. So whatever that's worth.
Well, that part is good news if everybody else gets on the same bandwagon. But the current administration is putting down clean energy, which is solar and wind in particular, and they're trying to raise the usage of fossil fuels, including coal. And it's only recently, in the last few months, they're now talking more and more about doing something about building more nuclear power plants. Whether that happens, it doesn't matter. It takes years to build even one nuclear power plant anywhere. So you wouldn't see a nuclear power plant come online likely for quite a number of years if they even started breaking ground today.
A new, you got Microsoft, you got AWS, you've got Oracle, and you've got Meta, all of which are each trying to solve the problem a little bit on their own in different ways.
Yes, that's true. And it varies a bit. Somehow, at some point in time, hopefully a lot of the best ideas from all these companies get compressed down into one good solidified model of how to get this under control.
It's difficult to understand why windmills are a bad thing. You can understand that if you're in the oil business, you want to promote it as much as possible.
Well, the windmill, I know a little bit about that because of relatives that live in Ohio, and they have in their community a number of windmills used by some of the industries. And they require high maintenance, very high cost because the most key components of the windmills come from China. What was put on China? High tariffs. That increases the cost. So between high maintenance, high cost of initially to put up just one windmill and maintain it, because they periodically have to take the blades of the windmill and replace them also. And the generators inside the housing at the top have specialized parts, mostly in the magnets used in the generators, which contain rare earth elements to make them better and stronger than old style magnets that everybody was making decades ago. So these combine together and make the cost of windmill generated power kind of high. And so a lot of people, even in the community in Ohio, where my relatives live, is kind of resistant to more and more of the windmills. That's the 2 cents I got.
The real problem is all the wires we have to move the electricity around.
That's
and
true
we
too.
need to have wireless electricity to solve that problem. So you could have smaller solutions, more local, than having to move electricity across the country or have the whole East Coast go out again like it did once, because everything was all connected.
I agree with the wireless transmission of energy. I'm not sure exactly how that would work with today's current knowledge, but there is also a need to do that as expeditiously as possible, because we already know, especially out west, a lot of the poles carrying electric lines and transformers on those poles are causing some of the worst wildfires out west, and that can spread elsewhere. You also have in even urban areas underground power vaults that periodically the transformers explode into great flames and knock out power to a large area within urban areas. So it's a combination of things.
Life's complicated.
Yes, I agree. But the bad part is I'm not sure how much forethought has gone into some of this drive that we've been doing towards AI and data centers even before AI really started taking off. More and more data centers were being built all over the place. Microsoft even created at least one data center under the ocean water and let the ocean cool the data center.
Well, we're sort of in a situation where we do try and have solar panels to try and offset some of it, but it's not powerful enough to really solve the problem. If you could have a solar panel on the side of your house that could give you all the electricity you need, that would certainly help a lot.
Yes, but
some of it with the concept there was selling electricity back to the electric company, which seems, rare.
well, yeah, but the solar panels and stuff like that, all the tariffs that are in place, because a lot of that stuff is imported, and also the general cost of putting that stuff in, and tax credits disappearing, vaporizing before our eyes, makes it very costly. So only those that have large incomes and good-sized nest eggs can really afford to do that kind of a setup. Everybody else is stuck.
Well, that only tells you that they're doing it wrong.
Well, you're going to have, I think, a good argument there in that against some of it. I'm not saying that you're absolutely wrong or anything like that, because I've had people years ago in my area do some solar stuff. But unless you already installed it, you probably can't afford it to begin with, because of the tariffs and disappearing energy credits that you could have gotten.
The tariffs are just a solution to try and stop it, not to promote it.
Well, we'll have to wait and all see how the whole thing turns out if we live so long. I'm gonna move on. Oops, I forgot. Got to get that one. Okay. Whoops. Got to get you back.
Microsoft, Pavan Davuluri, just said that the future of Windows is it evolving into an agentic OS. And what that is a buzzword, which means an AI that has the ability to act independently, make decisions, and pursue goals, instead of just responding to instructions. In more human terms, we could describe this as an OS with agency. And I think that's really concerning. Do we really want an operating system that acts independently of user input? Wasting system resources on endless AI-powered pop-ups that have read your personal files in an attempt to be useful? Or do we want an operating system that gets out of the way and lets you use your computer as you see fit? In this video, I'll argue for the latter. Okay, so let's take a step back. What would an agentic Windows look like? Well, if we follow the trends over the last few years with Copilot and other similar tools, it's clear that it means AI at every turn, all the time. Imagine you're looking to buy a new house, and you're doing some research online, and then you get a pop-up that says, "Hey, I notice you've been saving a few screenshots of house listings and budget files. Would you like me to make a moving plans folder for you?" That's something that's plausible now. Windows already indexes your files and recognizes patterns. And maybe you find it slightly weird, but also kinda useful. Okay, cool. What about this? Imagine you're importing photos from your phone, and then you get a pop-up that says, "Hi, I noticed a new person has been appearing in photos with you and your friend Jake. Is this his girlfriend? If you give me her name, I can recognize her and make the association for you for future organization." And you might think, okay, that is really invasive, but also still kinda useful. We've had photo apps that recognize faces for years. But its understanding is deeper than that. Still not convinced? What about something more extreme? Imagine you've just ended a private video call and you get a pop-up that says, "Hey, I noticed that you smiled when your mum showed her cat, Pablo. I've tagged cats as something that makes you smile and will offer a cute cat pic when I think you need a boost." This is not out of the realm of possibility. Microsoft have invested tens of billions of dollars into AI and they're not slowing down. We already know that Facebook ran, and may still run, tests that emotionally manipulate a select group of users. Is it so crazy to think that Windows might do something similar? This isn't happening now, but honestly, to me, it already feels like this. Current Copilot and AI tools feel like a violation of privacy. Why should my operating system be organizing and manipulating my life independently? And I think there's a better way. Linux. So should you switch to Linux? After all, its mascot is a cute penguin called Tux. This wonderful 3D printed Linux penguin is something you could make with this video's sponsor, Justway. Justway specialise in CNC machining, sheet metal, 3D printing, injection moulding, and urethane casting. So if you've got a project and need something bespoke, Justway have you covered. You can upload your own files or use someone else's. You'll get an instant quote, so you know exactly where your project stands. If you're looking for reliable service and good quality, check out Justway via the link in the description. So, Linux then. Linux is a whole other operating system, and it's been around for decades. It's a free alternative to Windows and macOS that you can install on your computer right now. And there's no need to worry about AI tools taking over your experience, or random and unnecessary violations of your privacy. Linux is open source, and built by people who are passionate about it, not those looking to make billions of dollars at any cost. And I really think it's ready for mainstream use. But what do you need to consider first? Well, Linux is an operating system, not a program. That usually means backing up your files and then erasing your entire computer. You'll need to do this unless you have a second system drive to dedicate to Linux. Secondly, you might not be able to run the same programs on Linux. We've come a long way in the past few years with things like Proton, which allow you to run a massive library of Steam games on Linux, and great alternatives to work and creative software. But you'll need to do your own research to see if your programs will run, and if not, whether the alternatives are good enough for you. Thirdly, Linux can be a bit quirky sometimes. I really believe that it's getting more and more friendly all the time, but if you're someone who doesn't want any troubleshooting at all, ever, Linux probably isn't for you. I'm not saying that to scare you off. I've had a fantastic experience on Linux Mint and Fedora over the past couple of years, no problems at all. But this can be a bit dependent on your specific programs and hardware, so do some research in that area too. Check out the other videos on my channel for guides on how to switch to Linux, how to back up your files, and how to test it safely without risking your Windows installation. In the meantime, I'll leave it there for now. This was just a short video to get you.
Okay, now before I open up to the floor, I partially agree with the guy, with one exception. Recent news that I at least listen to and know what's going on. Linus Torvalds, who is the creator of the Linux kernel, and the team that works with him, I think over 1,000 people, but especially the heads of them, are creating the first draft of guidelines for introducing AI into the Linux kernel. It may not be here today, but some tomorrow we will have AI also in Linux. I don't know how far it will go. I don't think anybody has a good idea how far that may go. Canonical might be one of the early adapters. Possibly IBM, who owns Red Hat Enterprise version, may also be a early adapter of some of the AI. But bottom line is AI is escalating exponentially to the point where it's going to be in all of our computers and all of our software unless we take current versions, say even Windows 10 and current versions of Linux, and keep them offline, don't update them. That's the only way you would ever avoid it, getting AI built in. Is that practical? Not really. It's a losing battle no matter how you look at it. So AI is here until such time as either they can't solve enough of the problems, and that includes profitability, because right now AI is not profitable for any of the companies, and a lot of the small ones are either being bought out by the big ones, or they are going to go under because they can't afford the continuing cost of AI development and trying to stay in the game. I'll open it to the floor. Any comments or questions? Wayne, you're very quiet tonight. You're muted.
Now we've got construction going on.
What, at where you're living?
Yeah.
Oh. I hope that's positive construction anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to finish up what we didn't get done earlier.
All right. Anybody else got any comments on this particular point of view? This agentic OS. I even took Copilot and I asked Copilot, what is agentic OS? And it gave me a response. And that's Microsoft's own AI that told me what it was. Okay, Burt, you had your hand up first.
Well, let Dennis go first.
Pardon?
Let Dennis go first.
All right, Dennis.
Well, here's what I'm not quite sure I understand. So right now, even on my Chromebook, I can go to open up the Google window and ask a question, and it's using AI like to research and answer for me. So I guess I'm not sure I understand what is the difference between that versus actually having AI on my computer. Like you were saying, put it into Linux. Well, why do I need it in Linux if I can get to it online through web browsers and stuff?
Well, first off, by having, and I recommend bringing up an AI client. It could be Gemini, it could be Copilot, Claude, etc., etc. Ask them what it means as an agentic OS and see what it tells you. Second, you have a situation where the more this stuff is in there and the more they learn about what you know, what you are looking at, and stuff like that, they can give you better answers, and those answers may give you some guidance of what choices you make in life. Just don't become over dependent. There are teenagers right now that are using AIs as though they were a live, real person to console with, which is dangerous to those individuals, because usually when you're consoling with someone else, a human being, they may have empathy and some understanding to some degree. The AI doesn't have that capability and never will, probably. So the end result is you can get a lot of bad advice that could possibly cause some people to become suicidal. And that's actually starting to appear in society, aside from social media and the effect that it has, especially on the younger generations.
Yeah.
So it's a case where, basically speaking, the agentic OS starts running the applications behind the scenes for something you are asking it to do. If you get any of the current AI-oriented browsers, Atlas, Cosmic, Dia, and some others, those, when you're using them, you don't see the normal browser. What you see is an AI, and you type in what, or speak through a microphone to it, what you are wanting or looking for, etc., in the way of information, and it runs all the applications necessary in the background, knowing other things about you from all the files that are in your computer, and also the information that the provider of the AIs have about you, the profile of you.
Now, maybe I'm remembering this incorrectly, but I thought within the last 6 months at one of our meetings that someone recommended not, if you need a new machine, don't go out and buy a machine that has the AI built in. Am I remembering that incorrectly?
In part, yes. It's the NPU that I mentioned with the Intel Ultra Core processors and the AMD Ryzen Pro processors. Those have an NPU in them. And realistically speaking, the average person right now has no need for it. Businesses and independent business people, on the other hand, can take great advantage of those things to be more productive, and more productive usually leads to more profitability, whether it's as a company and or as an independent employee, such as a contractor doing work for a company.
Would I be, if I was, so if I don't necessarily need it myself at this point, to buy one of those machines, would you be paying a premium? I mean, I haven't looked at machines recently.
You're going to get a premium. There's no two ways about it. And if you listen to that one video I did there about buying a new laptop as an example, but it applies to all machines no matter what in general. Then, like I said, after that video, the 14th generation of Intel and its corresponding AMD Ryzen processors, those have stopped production by and large. They're going to get older and older and older in technology as more and more of the new ultra-core processors and the Ryzen Pro processors are in more and more of the new equipment. Therefore, there's going to come a time when you're going to have to say, in order to keep going, I may have to get one of these newer machines. But here's the other kicker that I didn't bring up until now because of part of your question. Right now, the AI data centers are sucking up the GPUs, RAM memory, even SSDs and spinning hard drives galore, causing all prices to keep escalating. If you look at prices periodically, whether it's from Amazon, eBay, whatever, you're going to see the prices keep going up, up, up. I'm seeing prices right now that scare the hell out of me because they were a small fraction of that just at the beginning of the year. They were still more affordable then than what they are today. Black Friday to equal something that occurred in prices, say in the beginning of the year, would have to be so steep, you'd be probably paying less than 25% of the current costs. And that's because of AI data centers.
And you're talking about buying individual components, like little solid
actual
drive.
systems too. They're all going up. I mean, you can't be a manufacturer of a computer without having to buy all the components. That doesn't happen. Therefore, they get stuff in bulk. It's a bit cheaper than an individual buying an individual part, yes. But still, the total cost of an actual put together, ready to run system is way higher than it was at the beginning of the year.
But you mean companies actually need to buy these, let's say, these little 250 gigabyte solid state drives? I mean, they don't.
No, what's happened is the manufacturers aren't producing those. They're producing the big stuff. That's where the money is. Don't get caught up in thinking small. When you're talking data centers, you're talking the premium GPUs that might run as much as $5,000 or more to an individual. And SSDs that are 8 terabytes and going higher, and so forth. But that means the production in the factories is shifted from the smaller stuff that consumers would get to the big stuff where they can make big profits. So it's really getting spiraled, and you add in the tariffs that the administration has put on a lot of things. Good Lord, that's I've seen cost. I used to get occasionally something from China because I couldn't get it anywhere else at a reasonable price. That's hasn't happened in 2025. There's no way I'm buying anything from China because it's even out of Canada too. I've gotten stuff out of Canada. As soon as that package hits the U.S. soil, the inspectors check out what's in the package and so on and so forth, and they levy a tariff based on the value of what the content of that package is, and they will contact you to pay the tariff before they will release the item to continue to your location. It's already been happening. Burt?
Well, I guess there's a few different things we've been discussing. Going back to the last thing you were talking about, NVIDIA is the company that's been over the top recently, because when Microsoft builds a new center, well, I need 100,000 of those systems. And, so that, but that doesn't mean that the next person is going to use NVIDIA's chips, because somebody will make one that's a little bit better. And so there's going to be an evolution of, the best person, the best chip to solve the problem as new things get built or replaced. Because the old ones that are slower, people will want to replace them.
That's correct.
That's just the evolution of all that.
That's right.
But that's about the reason that it's tough to buy a computer at this point is because the NPUs that are in there probably aren't the future NPUs, because they haven't standardized to figure out what to do with them or how to work them. There's no software that runs the NPUs at this point. It's just a matter of, it's possible that they can hook up the the internet for AI to use those because they're faster chips, but they're not specialized, they're not standardized, and that was just in the beginning when they started thinking about, well, what can we do? You had people like Apple who made chips that had extra features, and so in Intel's world or AMD's world, they tried to put those extra kind of chips in for future development. But right now, I would say in 3 years, none of those things are going to be used. They're going to be just old technology.
Yeah.
So buying a computer at this point makes it hard. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't buy a computer if you need one to be able to keep up with technology.
That's correct.
That's
if you can afford
hardware
it.
stuff.
If you can afford it. But also too, when it comes to the NVIDIA and its GPUs, well, AMD pulled a big surprise that no one saw coming, and they now have the Radeon GPUs, which have always been low tier compared to NVIDIA GPU cards. Well, right now AMD has released new GPU that is very competitive with NVIDIA, and from the sounds of it, China may be ahead in several different areas, including the GPUs that we only know a little bit about, don't know a deep amount of knowledge, maybe outside the U.S. government. They may know more of what is capable and what is not. I don't know.
Well, we've always been in this sort of stair-step evolution of new technologies coming, and it's not going to stop. We haven't, it's not like we're here and it's all done. It's always going to keep evolving, just like most of technology has for the last 50 years. The reality in the other topic we're talking about is AI. Now, in the old days, we would go to a Google or a Microsoft Bing and ask a question, and it would search the system and come back with an answer or some information to give you a hint. The AI took it a step further to be able to say, we've got all this data that we've accumulated, legally or not, to be able to answer your question better. And so that's what AI generally is, but you have OpenAI that created a standard with Microsoft and some other companies, and now they're in a place where it's got to a short, maybe let's call it a 20% level of success. And each one of these companies that have their AI out there are failures. If you watched the 60 Minutes last Sunday, they did an hour talking about how terrible were the heads of those companies that have AI were saying their systems don't work yet. Now, they work somewhat, but they're not reliable. There's hallucinations. They don't have enough information, and they're still getting organized to be able to keep improving it every day. Copilot, I get updates almost every day. The reality is that those systems are just one part of it. The question was, what do I do with it? If you're just trying to replace Google search to get information, that's one piece of the puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle might be you want it to be your assistant. I remember in 1980, I did a program and talked about how the goal was to be able to, in business, that I had all these reports to run, and I wanted to be able to, push a button and have it run all my reports for me. And so that was the concept of, in business anyway, to be able to solve productivity, I guess is the best word. In reality, that's kind of what being an assistant would do. Now, it depends on what you're trying to do. If your assistant is, I want to find this document I did, or find me all the articles about that I have about this topic, well, that's being an assistant. If you wanted to say, send out the emails for the meeting, that's being an assistant. If you wanted to say, let's plan a trip somewhere and get me all the information on going to New York, that's being an assistant. If you wanted to be able to take that travel information and book the reservations for you, that's another level. And so what's happening now is it's actually out of control.
Mm-hmm.
What I saw in today's Microsoft program was that they've created this monster, and the concept was, okay, the AI can be sort of like the overlord, can be the top guy. And then built into the overlord are these different specialty agents. That's like we used to do when we made programs for every special thing. You want an agent that will go out and take your data and call out, find the best flight for you, and book a cab and all the other things to get your travel. Well, there have been programs like that before, but the agent being under AI is a little smarter than just being connected to different things. It's trying to understand the inferences of all the things that you do. So by knowing the inferences, it knows that you need a cup of coffee on the way. It knows that you need a special seat. It knows how to specialize the information without having to have you go figure it out by yourself. It knows your routine, so it then can do it with a special agent underneath AI to go take care of creating that solution. Now, the same is true on the business side. On the business side, we've got a point where there's something now called work IQ. And work IQ is a concept of now knowing all the things that AI knows what you do. It knows about how you work. It knows your job. It knows everything about the company. It knows not just one thing. In other words, we have the ability with the AI go into Excel, and you can ask it questions. It'll create a spreadsheet. But beyond that, it'll take it further. It'll take it to make that spreadsheet, pass it on to everybody in the company who has authorization to see it, in group chats, being able to do teams of information. It takes it all a step further. Unfortunately, when they started these agents, it got out of control. All of a sudden, there's 1,800 agents and growing drastically rapidly every day. And so they don't know how to stop it, so to speak. They don't know how to control it. And so they keep trying to build tools to be able to control all these agents so they, don't take your company down along the way. And so this is all in flux. They announced today maybe 200 different things to be able to try and deal with the AI world and upgrade every app that they have to be able to deal with it. But in reality, it's going to take time for all this to evolve, just like it did when we went from DOS to Windows, Windows to Internet to apps. Each step has been years to be able to keep upgrading every step along the way. Now we're at the point where with AI, eventually, it'll be your Windows. It'll be your system. And you'll just turn it on, and it'll say, what do you want to do today? Or did you take care of this task you were supposed to take care of? And it'll connect to everything you do, your email. Basically almost can now. Your everything about your company, everything about your job. They did an example of taking a new person, and so they hired a new person, and the AI action that it had with this agent will set the whole person up across their whole company and all the things you would do when you would take on a new person in HR. I mean, all these things eliminate jobs for people and create productivity. Productivity means a person who does things doesn't get dragged down with things that can be replaced where the computer can do them in the background. That's the future of AI.
Let's give some time to Wayne.
Yeah, I use AI just about every day. In fact, today I used, Copilot to figure out how to get my wife's watch with the her contacts on her Apple Watch, because she bought a new Apple phone here last week, and somewhere or another it didn't get on there. And instead of trying to go to Apple to find out what's going on, I just asked Copilot and gave me some things to do, and one of the things was to turn both of them off and start over again in it. And then of course I had to reload all the stuff back onto the phone, but it worked. So I have a lot of things that I use Copilot for. Most of these are technical type of questions.
Okay. Dennis?
Not that I disagree with you, Wayne, but I've been using YouTube videos basically to do the same thing you were talking about. Like I've used YouTube videos to see how do certain things on my wife's iPhone. I've used YouTube videos to see how to change the belts on my snowblower. I've used YouTube videos to do something on my lawnmower. Matter of fact, probably before the day is over, Tim will probably use YouTube videos to see why his snowblower starts and runs for 2 minutes, then quits, and now it won't start at all. So I've been. It wasn't necessarily AI, it was just information I found without AI. I'm just trying to make an observation. There's a lot of information out there not necessarily needing AI.
Okay.
I've used YouTube as well.
That's the whole point of AI with this agentic agent kind of concept. The concept is you already have all the data, so we don't have to go somewhere else to get it. We know all about you, and we can connect you to the things that you need because we know all about you.
More directly.
Yeah, you don't have to search through half a dozen YouTube videos to try to figure out which one, fits what you're trying to do.
Right. Now, I want to add 2 points at this point. Point number one. Burt brought up about doing a search with like Google or Bing, etc., like we've always done in the past. Now they create quite often a summary up at the top, and some of them just give you the summary, and some of them say I have the ability to give you a summary of what you're looking for in that search. Most people are now just looking at that summary for the information they're looking for, and I've done that myself at times, but they stop going down to the individual articles, and that's hurting the creators of those articles to the point where they're going to start curtailing creating the articles and content, and that turns off the spigot of some of the knowledge that's going on. The second part is AI is already having an impact here in 2025 in getting a lot of people pink slips. And there's generally two reasons. Reason number one, the company has found ways through AI to be more productive, not needing some of those people. Other people are getting a pink slip because they refuse to really use and work with the AI to create more productivity that helps the company grow and more profitability. And so, in a manner of speaking, those people may be putting themselves out of a job, and unless they turn that thinking around, they're going to have a harder and harder time finding gainful employment as time goes forward. Burt?
I guess, what's difficult at this point is there are no standards to learn. That a lot of it's just creative of asking a question or getting an idea, and it doesn't mean that it's useful. But the easy things of productivity can certainly say, okay, I spend 4 hours a day going through my email, and maybe AI can help me do that in 10 minutes.
Right.
And that's kind of thing that companies are looking for.
Right.
And therefore, they may say, okay, now you've got all this extra time, you can also do this. And if you do this, then maybe we don't need somebody else who's already there.
Right.
And so that's the evolution. And then there's the people who are stubborn. I remember in accounting where you had people who were used to working an adding machine and on columnar paper, and all of a sudden there were accounting programs, there were spreadsheet programs, and it was very difficult for them to make the conversion. Over the last 50 years it's happened, but it took a long time for a lot of people to get used to dealing with change in the world.
Yes, and the bad part about it is, and I've stated this many times in various meetings we've had, you've got to have an open mind and you have to be adaptable. Otherwise, you yourself become obsolete.
There is the concept that says that's the way we do it. And that's the way we did it. And that's what you do if you're a new person here. Follow the rules. Now, some of that has to go on a little bit, but change is very hard. And everybody who comes onto a company thinks, that they know better, they're going to fix everything. And that's not usually how it works, too.
Okay, I'm going to try and get into this next video, which will be the last one we'll probably get to tonight, and then I'll post the handout. There's a lot of content there, probably around 60 articles. All right, let's see what we get here.
Hi, Brentic here, where tech is made simple. So late last week, I'll let you know that Microsoft had shared an interesting post over on X, where Microsoft has said, and I'm quoting, Windows is evolving into an agentic OS, which basically means that the operating system will be able to think for itself under certain circumstances. And I also mentioned in the video that users are not happy and were not happy regarding this decision by Microsoft. I'll leave the video linked down below and in the end screen if you'd like some more information. Now, as I did mention previously in that video, Microsoft had actually turned off the comments for that post over on X because things were getting pretty negative when it came to the feedback. And just to let you know now that Microsoft has actually responded to the post. And I thought this was interesting. So to head over to X once again, here's a comment by a user called Gurgly, Can't see any reason for software engineers to choose Windows with this weird direction they are doubling down on. Okay, so an unhappy user. Here's the original post by Microsoft. And here's the follow-up post, which I'm just going to read quickly for the purpose of this video. It says, "Hey Gurgly, I'm responding here, and I think this applies to a bunch of the comments that people have made. I mean, a lot of comments, and there were a lot of comments, mainly negative. And by the way, Pavan Davaluri is the Windows chief over at Microsoft. He says, the team and I take in a ton of feedback. We balance what we see in our product feedback systems with what we hear directly. They don't always match, but both are important. I've read through the comments and see focus on things like reliability, performance, and ease of use, and more. But I want to spend a moment just on this point you are making, and I'll boil it down. We care deeply about developers." That's an interesting statement, which I think is going to raise a bit of debate. "We know we have work to do on the experience, both on the everyday usability, from inconsistent dialogues to power user experiences." I don't think inconsistent dialogues is spot on. I think there's a lot more that users don't want besides inconsistent dialogues. It's mainly to do with the ads and the AR and so on. Carries on to say, "When we meet as a team, we discuss these pain points and others in detail because we want developers to choose Windows. We know words aren't enough. It's on us to continue improving and shipping. We love to connect with you about what the team is doing to address these areas if you are open to it." And then we've also got some comments below that, which are once again not very positive and are mainly negative. So Microsoft says it cares about its developers and kind of just sees inconsistent dialogues as the problem. So once again, as I've posted previously, it seems that Microsoft is not in touch with its user base, because there are bigger problems than just inconsistent dialogues currently with Windows. It's mainly the AR that Microsoft is pushing into the operating system, and this kind of agentic way they are pushing now with the Windows OS. So I thought this was interesting. Now, while we are talking about an agentic OS, over the weekend I ran a poll regarding that Microsoft had said that Windows is evolving into an agentic OS. And users are not happy. And I asked the question, so would you like Windows to be an agentic OS? And out of the 951 votes currently, 57% of you said no. And 35% of you said you don't know what an agentic OS is. My tip, just do a quick Google search. Google will help you out if you don't know what an agentic OS is. So this begs me to ask the question once again. If on this channel, 57% of you say no, you don't want Windows to be an agentic OS. But if we head back to the post, and Microsoft is calling inconsistent dialogues, that's basically menus. They're referring there to, I think, is the light and the dark mode that isn't consistent across the board. That's kind of all that Microsoft seems to think is the problem. No mention here that Microsoft is going to stop adding AR to Windows. So I thought that was interesting. Let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think Microsoft is out of touch, as we have spoken about on the channel? Let me know.
Okay.
Hi, Brent Tech here, where tech is made simple. So as spoke.
Okay. Now I'm going to start this next one here. This has a lot of interesting things, and I'll start putting the posting in the chat.
So, with Windows 11 25H2 now out, it's time
Dang it.
to go over some of the new settings added in 25H2, and of course some of the old ones that you should still turn on, or off depending on the context. Stay tuned. With each new version of Windows, there's new settings to control some of the new features that come built in. Some of these features are really cool features that are turned off by default, and some of them aren't so good and are turned on by default. So today we're going to go over these and I'll tell you what each of these features does and whether or not you should turn it on or off. But first, I got to pay some bills. So check out today's sponsor. Are you still running Windows 11 unactivated because the license just costs too much? Then you should and click the link that says change product key. Enter the product feature in Windows that dates all the way back to Windows ME. Now, it hasn't always been the best feature. In fact, it was recommended to disable it in Windows ME.
I want to back that up a little bit because you missed the name of what
So let's just jump right in, and I'll start with an old setting that I'm still a little confused as to why Microsoft started disabling by default. That setting is System Restore. This is a feature in Windows that dates all the way back to Windows ME. Now, it hasn't always been the best feature. In fact, it was recommended to disable it in Windows ME because it didn't work very well back then. But in modern days, it's a great feature and really should be enabled by default. But Microsoft disables it now because they want people to rely more on some of their new features like reset this PC or even backup. And if you think about it, did you notice the change here? Because System Restore is intended to fix a running system, while features that Microsoft wants people to rely on today are all based on reloading Windows. I mean, this really hits me to my core because even Microsoft is giving up on fixing Windows computers. This used to be a problem with big box store tech departments that would just nuke and pave a system without any care in the world about a customer's applications and data. Now, it's obvious why this is becoming a common practice because even Microsoft recommends it. But that's okay, because I'm going to show you how to turn it back on so that next time your system doesn't boot or you're stuck in Windows recovery, it doesn't tell you that you have no restore points. So let's jump on the system and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so here we are in Windows 11. If we go down to settings here, we go into system and we scroll all the way down to about, as you can see, we are running 25H2. Now, this may not be the same OS build that you see, but it's the current one as of the making of this video. So hopefully too many changes don't happen by then. I tried to enable as much stuff as I possibly could because Microsoft is kind of slowly rolling out Windows 10. I even had to manually enable the new start menu. But either way, hopefully all these settings won't change like immediately after I publish this video, but if they do, it'll give me an excuse to make another video. So to enable System Restore, this is really quick. You hit start, search for System Restore, and then once you see create a restore point, go ahead and launch it. And as you can see right here, it's turned off. Now on some systems it's turned off and on some systems it's not. I'm not really sure what exactly causes it to turn on and off, but the way you turn it on is you simply go right here to where it says configure, you say turn on system protection, and then you choose about how much you want to use. I would go between 3 to 5%. You can even go up to as high as 10% if you wanted to. However, it's probably a little excessive. So I'm going to do 3%. That gives me almost 30 gigs of space from the drive for system restore points. Go ahead and hit OK, and it's turned on. And then at this point, you can go ahead and hit create. I'm going to create a system restore point, hit create, and it will create it. Now at this point, that's it. System Restore is turned on. So the next time you have a problem, you can always come back and restore from a restore point if for whatever reason something goes wrong. So now that we have System Restore re-enabled, the next feature that we're going to enable is a new feature to 25H2. This one's called Quick Machine Recovery. I covered this in a video a while back, but I'll briefly go over it again really quick here. This is essentially replacing Startup Repair in Windows. And it's a good thing we have a replacement for Startup Repair because it never actually worked in the first place. At least it never worked for me. If it ever worked for you, let me know down in the comments below. But I think it was more of a placebo than anything else. But what Quick Machine Recovery does is it tries to actually diagnose the problem and apply a patch available from Microsoft's website in real time. Now, this isn't going to be helpful in every single situation, but it's definitely going to be more helpful than Startup Repair was. So let's jump on the system and I'll show you how to turn it on because unfortunately Microsoft for some reason disables it by default. Maybe for privacy? I don't know. But either way, Let's get it done. Now, I don't know for sure if they keep this disabled for privacy or not, but that would be kind of a big turn of events for Microsoft, actually considering people's privacy, because Quick Machine Recovery does access Microsoft servers in a situation to where the system goes down. So it may be a privacy issue, honestly. I have no idea why they keep it disabled by default. But to re-enable it, you just go ahead and click Start, go to Settings, and then from here you want to click on System, and then from System you want to scroll down to Recovery right here. And then from Recovery you want to go to Quick Machine Recovery right here. And by default it's going to be turned off just like this, but all you got to do is just flip it on. And then I would recommend checking the Continue Searching if a solution isn't found. Now essentially what this does is not every problem is going to have a fix. So if there's an issue that's affecting millions of Windows computers, your system goes down and it can't find a solution. Well, Microsoft may be working on a solution in real time to a problem if it's affecting enough Windows PCs. So what this is telling it is you can look for a solution every 30 minutes and restarts every 180 minutes. So what this is going to do is it's going to continue to search for a problem that hopefully Microsoft has diagnosed and applied a patch for. So even though the Quick Machine Recovery won't work at the very beginning, maybe after a couple iterations, 30 minutes to an hour, it'll work and your system will boot. At least that's the idea. So hopefully this in practice is going to work well. Hopefully we don't come back from here, 10 years from now and say Quick Machine Recovery was just as useless as startup repair. But, it's very well we may. Okay, so the next setting, we're going to go ahead and close this here.
I'm going to pause it there because this is where restore point comes in. If there is no fix, especially after 180 minutes, it'll still keep looking. But do you sit there waiting for a solution to the problem with quick fix, or if it was caused by a Windows update, if you have restore points turned on, it creates a restore point. Therefore, you can restore that restore point and be back to a functional machine right away. And then wait several days, and maybe the fix will be in, and you can update your computer again and the problem won't occur. It depends upon what caused the problem, and that's in the diagnostic information. So I'm going to continue it from here. I do remind you, download the handout file right away and be ready to save the chat so you have the other information.
The next setting is going to be concentrating on the new start menu. If hopefully you have the new start menu on your system, I actually kind of like it, but there's a few issues that I have with it. Like for instance, the all button is now gone and it's instead segregated to different categories right here. Unfortunately, categories that you can't actually change. So you have productivity, utilities, other, creativity, entertainment, information, reading, and accessibility. You don't actually have the ability to customize these categories, but you can change this to either a grid view or a list view. So if you wanted the list view, you'll just have a really, really long Windows start menu. But by default, it comes in a category view. However, we're going to be looking at this recommended section because a lot of people really don't like the recommended section. And Microsoft tends to run ads in the recommended section. If you've ever seen the suggested apps, they're usually right here in recommended. So a lot of people like to turn this off. So in order to turn it off, we're going to go into settings. We're going to go into personalization right here, and then from here we're going to go into start, and then from here you have these top things right here. These are all the different things that go into the recommended section. This shows recently installed apps. It shows recommended files like recent files and File Explorer and things of that nature, and it also shows recommendation for tips, shortcuts, and new apps. This is the advertisement. So if you just want to disable the advertisements, then you can check it right here. And you can also, like for instance, get rid of the newly added apps and have the recommended section be just files that you've recently opened. Or if you want, you can just flip it off completely, and then when you click the start button, it's gone forever. Or at least until you flip it back on. And while we're in this section, there's another thing that I notice a lot of people asking about in Windows 11, and that's the fact that you don't have a lot of system icons available like you did in Windows 10. At least they're not on by default, but you can turn them on right here. If you click on the folder section right here, and then from here, you can essentially turn any of these on. So normally I will put on Settings and File Explorer. However, you can turn on any one of these that you want. And then once you do that, when you click on Start, you'll see that those come up at this bottom corner right here, and then you can launch those apps from right there. And you know what? While we're sitting down here on the taskbar, let me show you how to clean this up a little bit. We'll go ahead and close that, right click on the taskbar, go into taskbar settings, and then from here, there's a few things that you can clean up. For one, you can get rid of task view and widgets. So that's essentially this icon here and this icon over here. And if we check these two, it'll get rid of those. Now, I also like to typically get rid of the search box completely as well. And for that, you just click on the search box here and you can go to hide. But if you want, you can show just the icon if you want. But in reality, it's not even necessary, really. So if you go to hide, if you really want to search for something, just click the start menu and search for it, and it'll open up the search section. So you don't even need the icon there to be able to use Windows Search in the first place. And while we're sitting here trying to clean up our taskbar, there's a lot of other things that you can do down here too. So we'll go ahead and close this, open here, and then Windows 10 obviously always comes with a lot of junk that you don't want. Now typically some of the stuff that I get rid of is like Office 365. I usually uninstall that. I uninstall all of these apps like Spotify, Disney Plus, and I've noticed there's a lot less of these on systems nowadays. I mean, I have a lot of them here because this is an older install of Windows that I just keep updating to the latest version of Windows. However, you can remove all of these, and if Microsoft starts to add more to the system, then you can continue to remove them. But as you can see, there's an awful lot on mine. So yeah, I've noticed lately that there's only like one thing on newer installed systems. So hopefully that's going to be a trend and Microsoft's not going to be bloating down systems that often. But another one that I usually recommend uninstalling is this one also. This is the free Mail app. Now Windows used to come with just Windows Mail, but now they've turned it into Outlook. But if you have Office installed, you'll essentially have two Outlooks, and it gets really confusing about which one you actually want because it's just a slight difference in the icon. As you can see, this one has a point in the top, while regular Outlook has a square on the top, and they're really hard to tell apart sometimes. So I usually like to get rid of this one as well, just to make it so there's no confusion. And then while you're at it, you can also go into the category section right here and get rid of some of the other ones too, but unfortunately, it's harder to find in the category section, and one of the ones that I like getting rid of is we're going to go down to list right here, and it's going to be Copilot. So if we go down to Copilot, we can right click and hit uninstall. And now that I look at it, to be honest with you, I think that the category section is honestly kind of worthless because you really have to click on this to see all of the different programs that are running on here. And, you know, I don't think I've really noticed this before, but I don't like this at all. In fact, it's really annoying, to be honest with you. So maybe after learning what everything does, maybe it'll be a little bit easier, but it seems like you're having to click a lot of stuff in order to get to what you want when you can go just to list and you can list all the applications like normal. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm kind of missing the all button up top right here. I don't know about this new start menu. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about it. But so far, I'm not really all that impressed. But another problem I hear a lot of people complaining about is File Explorer. So I'm going to go ahead and run into pictures right here. And as you can see, there's a pretty big space in between all of your files. And it essentially makes it so you have to scroll more inside a file manager. Let me show you how to fix that. If we click on Start, we're going to type in regedit. We're going to go ahead and open that up, hit yes to the user account control. And then from here, we want to go into current user. Then we want to go to software. And then from here, we want to go into Microsoft. And then from Microsoft, we want to go into Windows. And all this is alphabetical. You usually just scroll down to the right letter and you'll find it. And then we're going to go into current version. Then we're going to go into Explorer. And then from Explorer, we're going to go into Advanced, right up top right here. And then for this, we're going to need to create a DWORD value. So we're going to right click, hit New, DWORD 32-bit. And then from here, we're going to type in Use Compact Mode. Just like that. Go ahead and hit enter. We're going to open this up and we're going to change this to 1 and then hit OK. And once we close regedit, as you'll see, Everything is a lot tighter in here. In fact, you don't have to scroll anywhere near as far as you did before. Now, the reason why Microsoft changed this in the first place was because of touchscreen displays. So if you have a touchscreen display, you know your fat fingers might click a couple icons when you're trying to click an icon directly. So they go ahead and spread it out so that way it makes it easier to touch. But a lot of people don't use touchscreen displays and they just want the old way back. And honestly, this even helps when you go into the large icons. So like on this one, we have the regular pictures themselves where you can see the thumbnails. Well, if we go ahead and open regedit again here, let me show you. I just noticed this when I was writing this video, didn't realize that this was a thing. We're going to scroll down to use compact mode and we're going to go ahead and turn it off real quick. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this out so you can actually see it on the screen. And as soon as we hit OK, watch down here, you'll see the icons move away from each other. See, just like that. So it kind of gives you more space in between the icons, and it has this big white space between a lot of them that's just wasted. So if you go down and you change the use compact mode again, back to 1, go ahead and watch in between all these pictures here. You'll see everything kind of tighten up just like that. So you don't have quite as much wasted space, maybe a little bit, but not as much as you did before. It honestly does more to affect the details pane right here. It keeps this one a lot more compact. And if this doesn't work right away like it did on mine, all you got to do is go ahead and restart Explorer to get it to work. And for that, you just right click, go to Task Manager, scroll down on Task Manager until you find Windows Explorer. Oh, I guess it's right up top. And just hit restart and it'll restart Windows Explorer. And then at that point, it should take effect. Okay, so most of the settings we just went over are the ones that will kind of make your 25H2 look a little less cluttered and maybe a little more debloated. But now I'm going to show you a setting that we've had for a while, but just hasn't been enabled by default. And I don't think it's gotten as much attention as it should have because honestly, this is a really cool feature. But let's jump back in the system and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so this setting that I'm going to show you guys right now, I think is a setting that we should have on every system on default. But for some reason, Microsoft decides they don't want that. So have you ever opened up a command prompt? You're in a specific folder and you want to run something, right? Like for instance, let's say I want to run sc stop beep. So what this is doing is it's stopping the beep service that uses the speaker on your computer. So when I hit enter, access denied. Dang it. So what I got to do is I got to click on start. I got to type CMD again. I got to right click. I got to run as administrator. Hit yes to the user account control. Do all of that. Then I've got to go back to the folder I was just in just to run the stupid command that I could have run if I just had sudo like Linux. Well, it turns out we have sudo just like in Linux. Let me show you how to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on start. We're going to go to system from within settings. System right here. Then we're going to go all the way down to advanced. Right there. And then from advanced, we're going to scroll down to right here where it says enable sudo. And once we check that on, we're going to hit yes. We're going to click this little arrow right here that goes and it tells you configure how sudo runs applications. Now by default it says in a new window. So what this is going to do is it's going to run that command that you just ran in a new command prompt window. But I don't want to do that. I want to do it inline. I just want to do it in the same console window that I'm currently in. So if you change it to inline, I think it's a little bit more useful. So we're going to go ahead and close this. And then we're going to go ahead and click start. In fact, I'm just going to click right here. And we're going to open up our terminal again. And like I said, this is not an administrator terminal. So I'm going to say sc stop beep, just like I did before, and hit enter. And as you can see, access denied. Obviously, it won't let me kill a service without administrator rights. So for that, I'm going to type in sudo sc stop beep. Hit enter, and now it's going to bring up the user account control, and you have to say yes to the user account control here, but then once you do that, boom, the service has not been started. Well, it failed to stop it because the service isn't started, obviously because I guess I'm not using the speaker on my system. But if you went sudo sc start beep and hit enter, it'll come up with the user account control again, hit yes, and it'll say, boom, it is now running. And now you can stop it if you want. It's up to you. Or you can just let your computer beep. Now, there's one setting in 25H2 that I really wanted to show you guys today, but unfortunately, it's just not available on my system yet because Microsoft is doing their partial rollout like they typically do with some new features. This feature is called Administrator Protection. It's a new way of dealing with the administrator rights on a Windows system. I think this is going to be a pretty huge update. Once enabled, it will replace the user account control prompt when you run an application that requires administrator rights. Now, what this feature does is instead of giving you a persistent admin token that malware can steal, and often does, it keeps you running as a standard user by default. But when you need elevation to run a program that requires admin rights, it prompts for an authorization through Windows Hello. So it will require at absolute minimum a PIN, but it will also work biometrically. Once approved, Windows creates a short-lived, isolated admin token from a hidden system account. This will be completely separate from your user profile. It uses that token to power that one app that you need and then self-destructs once the app is closed. This creates no lingering risk like the UAC system did before. It's disabled by default, but if you want to enable it, just go into Windows Security, then select Account Protection, and you should be able to find Administrator Protection in that section if it's been enabled for you. Unfortunately though, I couldn't play around with it prior to making this video because unfortunately I didn't have the feature available. I even tried using the Vive tool to enable it and just had no luck. So the feature might completely suck, but it sounds like a great addition to Windows Security. And if it works like it's advertised to work, then I highly recommend turning it on. But unfortunately, it'll mean you'll have to actually type a password instead of just hitting OK to a UAC prompt. But then again, you really should be doing that anyway. But like I said, I haven't played with it yet, so it does end up really sucking. Let me know down in the comments below. There is a possibility that it could cause problems with other apps that were designed for the UAC flow, but hopefully Microsoft thought about that in advance and added a little bit of backwards compatibility to it. I guess we're going to have to see. But it is a nice addition to Windows Security, being that you usually can just run administrator apps by hitting OK, which isn't the most secure thing in the world. But luckily, it's a feature that can be turned on and off. So if it does cause any problems, you can always just turn it off and go back to the old UAC system. But these are the settings that I found useful in 25H2. If there's anything that you think I missed, then make sure to let me know down in the comments below. There's a couple of
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. This account protection, that's in the security section. I only have 2 machines that have updated to 25H2, and others that I've been checking frequently have not gone up to 25H2 as yet. Like him, the account security feature does not activate right now on my version, just like his version. So there will be some kind of an update down the road that'll make that fully active. The thing that he showed about the sudo command, I'm wondering if one, he doesn't show using the up arrow to get to your command histories from the bottom up. In other words, the last command you did can be repeated, or you can go up as far as you want to in your history file to find the command you want to next execute, hit enter, and it works. Also in Linux, when you use the command where it failed, you can take in Linux, put in sudo bang bang. Bang bang is exclamation point, right in a row, 2 exclamation points. And that will then take the last instruction that failed and put it in place of the 2 exclamation points and execute the whole command without doing a whole lot of retyping. Anybody got any other comments? Okay, then we'll call it a night. I hope, did everybody get their download of the handout? Did
Yes.
everybody get set the chat to save the 2 URLs for the other articles?
Yep.
All right. Then I'll call it a night. We got a late start, but we got a late finish here. So you got your money's worth, and you'll just have to go through all the rest of that. There's a lot of other very good articles. I really recommend you look at as many of them as you can. You'll learn a lot from them. Okay? Have a
Very
good
good.
night, and everybody have a good Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
Oh, and Lennox will be next Tuesday night, even though it's 2 days before Thanksgiving.
What about Ed?
Thank you very much. This Thursday night is Ed Keating's meeting on understanding technology. Thank you very much, Burt.
Okay.
All right. Everybody, have a good night.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
Okay.